Hey guys, welcome back to Laurence McKenna on LFC channel, where we're talking about the point rescued by Liverpool or a points dropped scenario. One or the other. Let me know in the comments below which one you think it is. I'm currently erring on points dropped rather than points rescued, just purely from the way that the game played out. Liverpool's XG almost 2. I mean, Forest's XG was not even half a goal. And Chris Wood was the difference between Liverpool winning the game today and Liverpool not winning the game. And Jota was the difference between Liverpool feeling competitive and not feeling competitive. There are a lot of overarching things we need to discuss, but I want to discuss some of the more specific elements of how Liverpool are approaching games right now. We've really not been good enough in the last couple of first halves, not including the game against Accrington Stanley, though even in that game, you sort of think we're feeling our way into this. I get it. I get that we want control, and I actually don't think it can be whole halves. I mean, it can be, but it hasn't been. Forest are a good side, and I think we're very cautious against them. We've only taken 1 point off them this season, but also they're massively improving. They're very good on the counter-attack, and they're a team that are very defensively solid right now. Scoring a goal against them in the Premier League is a relative achievement, considering some of the runs that their goalkeepers have been on. And boy, does Sells and a lot of other goalkeepers step their game up when they play Liverpool. I don't know what it is. There's just something about stepping your game up when playing the Reds that is satisfying to goalkeepers. I think he probably had one of his best games of the season. We can discuss that and finishing and everything else in just a second. We really were feeling our way into the game. And when we did feel our way into the game, I think we were beginning to control and move Nottingham Forest around as we would have wanted to, but we gained momentum too late in the half. Referee blows the half-time whistle with only 1 minute of added on time. And Liverpool really were gaining confidence, but we weren't out of the game, but we weren't exactly controlling the game in the way that we would want to. Again, similar to what Feyenoord fans warned us about, or sort of, I guess, gave us some notes on, was Arne Slot does have a lot of games where in the first half it's a little bit more passive, and in the second half he makes his adjustments. Very often that can be good, but I think sometimes it can also leave the players feeling a little bit like they're waiting for their manager to do something. To an extent, he's waiting for the players to dig themselves out of it, which I certainly think is an approach he has. But I also think the players are sometimes looking at him going, right, are we stepping up here? Like, what's the deal? And I'd imagine that can be a little bit frustrating. I'm not necessarily blaming him for the performance in the first half, because I think the players certainly should take responsibility. But I think there are a couple of things we need to discuss. In one of the Liverpool groups I was in tonight, I went sort of almost out of my way, should we say, to identify the fact that Nunes wasn't playing in this game, that he's got almost as many yellow cards as he does goals and assists this season, or goals and then assists, and also that we really need a striker we can rely on. Jota is an excellent player, as I'll get onto, but we really need someone that we can kind of play and build our season around. We had that with Firmino, we had that with Mane, to an extent we got that with Salah, but we can't keep putting it onto him. He's a winger who's meant to get goals as part of the overall package, not as the only package out on the field. And I think there's over-reliance on the idea that Salah will get us out of a lot of these issues, or if we play through him, then he'll have a good game, doesn't always play into our hands. It especially means that when the opposition focus on neutralising Salah, neutralising that right-hand side, very often our left-hand side needs to step up. And I think at the moment, it's nothing to do with it being one wing or the other. It's to do with the fact that in the middle, they know that there isn't all that much of a threat. We kept spamming crosses into the box, as we've done in the past, which maybe, again, is an element of misdirection, maybe is also given a warning to their defenders, maybe is also a tactic of sorts. I think there are numerous reasons as to why you would spam crosses into the box. But sometimes it feels like cutting out the element of that cross and playing on the ground, giving Liverpool a bit more of a direct route to goal and almost upping the XG in a deliberate manner works a bit more efficiently. We don't currently have a striker we can rely on. It is that simple. We have Jota, but no one else. I don't think we can rely on Darwin Nunes, and with the rumours swirling around him at the moment, leads me on to another wider point about the club. There are too many players at the moment in transitional situations in their career for us to be able to rely on them consistently in games. It's not to say that their head's not in the football. It's not to say they're not professionals. It's not to say they've not been in these kind of positions before. None of those things are, I think, the centre of the point that I'm making. But when you have a squad that doesn't necessarily seem settled, then the overall team vibe, the groupthink, all these different things collectively can sometimes go a little bit out the window. I'm not saying that's the main reason why we're not performing in games right now, but there needs to be unity. And at the moment, we look like we've got a system and a reliance on minor adjustments, which is great. But at the same time, we need to be dominating games in ways that we're not right now. And at the moment, I do think there's a bit of a lack of confidence. Salah's still not signed the contract, nor is Van Dijk, nor is Trent. That's three situations that are in transition. Not necessarily Arne Slot's fault, not necessarily Edwards, not necessarily Hughes. I think they were always going to be in this situation because of the way the contracts have been allowed to run down. FSG to an extent, but probably also some previous management issues, right? Then we've got Nunes, subject to offers. I think then we also have Luis Diaz. Lucho's been fantastic at times for us this season, but I also think he's been asked to play in an unusual position that he's not always necessarily comfortable in. There have been times where he's shone in it, but there's also been times where he's not looked absent from the game, but hasn't offered that cutting edge that we need. Fair enough. Like, I think he's being asked to play one of the more difficult positions on the pitch right now, and I get the difficulty of that. I'm not sure I even do, to be honest. I probably don't even know half the difficulty of his position from coming from someone who doesn't play the game, but you get my point. And he's also subject, I think, to interest from foreign bodies. So we're talking Barcelona, we're talking other big teams in Europe that, frankly, I think would turn my head. Frankly, I think would turn anyone's head. But more than anything, certainly turn a South American's head. And I feel like that's a fair assessment of where we're at. Not saying, therefore, he can't play. I'm not saying, therefore, he's not good. But I think there are certainly elements of us just not knowing the future of this side well enough. We need another striker in there. Dan's is obviously one of the solutions, but I also think he's probably still too young to rely too much on. Chiesa isn't able to transition into the team, clearly because of fitness. Nunes doesn't play often enough, and when he does, I feel like he still uses Salah as a safety blanket. And even then, it's very clear that Nunes is not one of our starters, and belief is a big part of his game. Again, fair enough. He will go to another team where a massive amount of belief is going to be pumped into him, and, I can't blame him for that. But I also don't think that it plays well into our season. We've got other players who are almost force-feeding some things through the middle here in Trent and at times Mo out on the wing. And even that force-feeding really doesn't help us. We're very direct once Jota came on the field. I've got to admit, I think Tsimikas is certainly our premier corner or at least set-piece deliverer right now. The frustration comes that obviously he can't start every game. When he does hang the ball in there, certainly we get more results. We should have capitalised more from set-pieces and second balls from set-pieces this evening. But boy, did those guys know how to put someone on the line. Boy, did their goalkeeper have a good game. And boy, were there times where I thought, if Salah puts this on that postage stamp that I know he's capable of, then we're 3-1 up. Probably even just winning this game 2-1 and we walk away happy with it. 3 points, 3 points. As far as take theirs, we'll take ours. We get away with that from earlier in the season. The hidden blessing here is that earlier Man City also drew, Chelsea also drew. We cannot bank on other teams having these kind of results. And I get it. It's all about when you play teams, all about these kind of things. But Arne Slot would be frustrated by that. We wanted a bit of a redemption arc against this Nottingham Forest side, and I think Forest have only gained in momentum since we played them. Slot's fixation on that game at the time probably plays out differently now to this fixation. At the time, it was about the fixation of the overall quality of the league and us dropping points to an inferior, in inverted commas, with all due respect to Forest, team. Now it's much more like, hey, it's actually some good points earned or a good point earned. Really, maybe we were fortunate to get away with it earlier on in the season. They're a very good defensive team. And I think, again, there's been this headline around Zubimendi today. I think we saw Alexis McAllister trying to press the issue at times. Szoboszlai still feeling his way back into the game. When Kirk came on, I did feel he offered quite a good option, just being tricky in the box. But again, I think we need someone who's going to run it from that area of the midfield. That brings me on to two other players. Gravenberch, I still think, is one of our team of the seasons, and I think he's a Premier League team of the season. The guy is incredible. I think his reading the game's great. The fact that he was asked to drop into the back line when Konate came off probably shows what kind of centre-back we're looking for on that side, shows how confident we are in Virgil van Dijk, and certainly shows the level of control that Liverpool actually had in the second half, as opposed to the first half where it felt like much more even. The portrayal of this game, by the way, on our native broadcaster in the UK is that it was a push and pull. Forest were as equally in it as we were. It's not the case. Liverpool controlled possession. Chris Wood really only led one of a couple of attacks and counter-attacks in that area. And even then, if one of their strikers puts it through, Alisson picks it up, it technically counts as a save. So it's frustrating for me because I genuinely think that Liverpool were by far the more premier team this evening. It doesn't mean that we deserve to win. I think Forest put up a very big shout. But I can see the frustration. They played us perfectly again. They were probably a little bit more wily than we are. They probably are a little bit smarter than we are overall. At times, I think this Liverpool team can come off as a little bit naive. It's the same in the Klopp era, same in this era. There were just times where I thought, and I don't want to complain about the referee too much because we're certainly a better team than having to rely on the referee this season. Certainly a better team than having to rely on the ball being a good ball. But the point is, there were a couple of times where Liverpool players went down in the first half. You would have expected them to have gotten a free kick. Forest players go down and they got their free kick. That frustrating contrast between the two. Sometimes it can feel, even though I'm not saying it is, as if the referee's trying to level out the game in some capacity. Not quite sure why they would do that in the first place, but the kind of gnarly element of it is it can take away from some of Liverpool's momentum, and I think Slot himself certainly very much relies on that anaconda-style snake squeezing the life out of the opposition, and if they can just go down and get free kicks, if we can't go down and get those free kicks, I'm not saying we should easily go down, but if we do get fouled, we don't get those free kicks, and there is a frustration there. Which leads me on to Liverpool's penalty shout. There was only really one penalty shout in the whole game, and I think it's one of those ones where VAR can't overrule that because the referee's made what I think is a clear and obvious decision on the field not to give a penalty. It was 50-50, so it seems fair enough. I could see it going the other way. I can see why Liverpool would be frustrated with it, the opposite of that. I guess my frustration is that I get why, Murillo was there to collect the ball, but surely if Salah isn't impeded, then he's putting his foot in there, he's making a 50-50 challenge, and there has to be something there. Because I think this referee tonight was to an extent intimidated by the environment and allowing the people around him to ref the game alongside him, I don't think he was ever going to give that. And again, I don't want to have to rely on that. We had a few balls cleared off the line this evening, a few incredible saves. If we put them in the exact positions where they're meant to be, we have clinical finishers. Again, a striker we can rely on. Maybe we're in a better position. But I think that this will not be portrayed in that way. As Liverpool fans, we have to remember, and clinically, we have to remember this, there are going to be other people who have other interests outside of ours in the Premier League. We still sit top of the table. Arsenal, I think, I'm looking at the table now, 7 points behind us, equal on games, even though I hate to count games in hand as wins because I think that's arrogant, first of all. I also think it would have almost been better at this point to have played. Would it have been better to have played Everton at that point? No. But when we play them later in February, will it be better to play them then? Most probably. That David Moyes side, there's none of history there, there's all these kind of things. It's not necessarily fantastic to have to play them in that time, but it's 2 points lost rather than 3 points gained, and probably 2 points lost rather than 1 point gained in this one. The frustration for me is, I think still people are going to ratchet up that pressure on Liverpool, especially Arsenal fans, especially a London-centric media, which seems to not really understand and seems to really enjoy saying that Forest were great. Tonight they called Liverpool like the bourgeois or something like that, and Forest the challengers. I mean, that's certainly not the case given the amount of money that Forest has spent over the last few years. Certainly not the case given their amount of transfers and the amount of outlay in order to get them level with Liverpool. Liverpool obviously have that long-term spend, but Forest have an institute there. And I think credit to them. They've got a great ground to go to. I am looking forward to a number of other teams this season having to play them. They still have to play quite a few big sides in the Premier League. But that leads me on to my next point. Liverpool now go away to Brentford next weekend, the weekend coming. Difficult game. Brentford, City just suffered a 2-2 draw against them. Liverpool now go away to them. Then they go away to Lille. Then they home to Ipswich. Then they go away to PSV. Sorry, we're at home to Lille. Then we're away to PSV. Then we're away to Bournemouth. That is 2 tricky games. Then we're at home to Tottenham. That's a game that we need to win and we need to recover from 1 goal down. 1 goal in that game changes everything, I think. First one scored probably has a preferable position. We then play Plymouth in the FA Cup, early February. And then that is a murderer's row, by the way, after that FA Cup of mid-Feb into, I want to say like mid-March, because then there's an international break. In that set of games, we've got Wolves, City, Newcastle. So really it's Aston Villa, Newcastle and City in the late part of February, early part of March. I think at that point we'll probably know if Liverpool are on for something. We'll probably know what Liverpool's overall position is. But in those last few games of the season, there's obviously some big games in there. Back to back to back, we play Spurs, Chelsea and Arsenal. I think we want to put as much light between us and everyone else as possible between now and that early February time, if that's even possible. I think at the moment, tides have shifted, whatever you want to call it. But tonight, I actually think Liverpool will take a lot from that game. Analysts often come in and say, hey, you should have won this game, blah, blah, blah. Let's just go through some of those stats and I'll just read them out to you and tell you how dominant Liverpool were. 71% possession, probably higher overall in critical moments. And really, there are times where we allow the opposition onto the ball. 1.95 in terms of XG, that might get adjusted afterwards once some stats have more accurately been collected. 5 of their goalkeepers, they have 5 massive goalkeeper saves, 9 corners for us, 0 for them, probably showing the overall wave of the game. We did have a few more passes, but we double the amount of passes of theirs. We had double the amount of tackles on their side as well, but they got a lot more of the free kicks. They got 10 to our 7. I could have just read you out that. But obviously, that was even before I'd even read that. Probably should have read that before I even did this match review. But I don't like to read stats. I feel like they can sometimes overshadow what is an honest match gut reaction. Disappointing is what I would say. But again, we are somehow soothed, which I'm not, by the state of other clubs in the Premier League. Still got Arsenal to play. We played them ahead of everyone else. And Arsenal will be a game ahead of us by the time they finish that one. Like I said, not really relevant. We need to have a discussion about Alisson at some point, but tonight is probably not the night. I don't think I'd question him over Chris Wood's finish. It's an elite striker finish, and the ball goes beyond Virgil van Dijk, who forced him wide. Chris Wood's in good form at the moment. I'll give him that. And you kind of have to doff your cap or take your cap off sometimes to some of these people who go out there and put in good performances. Chris Wood is one of those. He will continue to be good. I don't think he's going to get a golden boot, but he's certainly a player that I respect in the league. A lot of split positions, a lot of angry / frustrated people. Some people talking about the lack of depth in the team or the lack of reinvestment. That I think that could become a narrative through the rest of the season. But for now, I want to focus on what we actually have. I think January there has to be one change in there. I'm not sure we're going to make that change, but I wouldn't understand why Liverpool put these rumours around Darwin and everyone else and brief press if they didn't think that there was something possible to get out of a lot of these sides. I think we just need to change the striker situation and we change Liverpool's fortunes this season to go up again. I'd love to know who you guys think we could get. It's tricky in January, isn't it? But I just want to get someone, anyone, who can score a goal, be a threat, and not allow the opposition to relax during the time they've got the ball, which is how I feel when I look at Darwin Nunes. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you're South American and you want to comment on this video, there's somehow some sort of South American bias. I thought McAllister was fantastic. I think Diaz is still a great player, even if he has had his head turned. And I think we should buy more South Americans because I love watching them. Is that good enough for you? Are you an idiot? Probably still an idiot who's going to comment something about anti-South American bias. Sobo's coming back. I actually think McAllister was still good. We had too many misplaced passes in that first half. They knew where to cut off our passing lanes. They did a lot of those similar things to the way they did at Anfield before. It's frustrating, but we're here. Nuno looks happy. Slot looks frustrated. Tells the story of the way the game really went. Appreciate you guys watching the channel, and I will check in with you again tomorrow. Much love.